I'm Dr. Duke with The New American. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by the CEO of the John Birch Society, Art Thompson, to talk about some of the issues, the broader historical and cultural issues related to the coronavirus. Art, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Now, as with all due respect, somebody who's lived a longer life than I have, can you remember anything going back to even World War II and the Great Depression? Can you think of any major crisis in American history in the last 100 years that have necessitated anything like these kinds of suggested solutions, the hunkering down, the prohibiting people from being on the streets? Have you seen anything like this?
The only thing, not in my lifetime, the only thing that you can show in the entire history of the United States were similar things in certain counties on border states during the Civil War, where they actually went in and cleared out the counties. Nobody could even live there by federal government law. But nothing since that time, except for the Japanese in World War II, the citizens in the United States who were Japanese.
Being interned,
yes. But other than that, no. And the thing about it is that you've got to ask the question, why particularly on this virus? For instance, Donald Trump in his news press conference yesterday on this corona thing said that we're heading on a schedule of 50,000 deaths due to the flu. And not one reporter challenged him on that or asked the question, well, wait a minute, we've got a few hundred deaths as a result of the coronavirus from Wuhan and no possible vaccine at this time. And yet we have a flu over here that's going to kill 50,000, and we have vaccines for that, and we're not doing anything about that one. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's a major takeaway. We have a number of different flu vaccines. We've identified different strains of the flu.
That's right.
We know it's coming every year. We get our seniors vaccinated, and still, right, we're on track for almost as many car deaths, I think. 50,000 dying from the flu. That's coming close to the number of people who will die on our streets in automobile accidents.
Yeah.
And with corona, we've still, we've known about this for months now. It's been in America for months now. Things are starting to crest a little bit, but with all we've been expected to believe would be happening, why aren't we maxing out at this already? And so here we are now, and it seems like this is proliferating somewhat slower than they imagined. Why these draconian propositions, even out of the White House? There's never been anything like this before. So why? Let me ask you this question. I think it's a big one in my mind. Why is the American people seemingly so willing to accept these incredibly restrictive and constitutionally questionable sequesters that are coming? In Wisconsin, where we are, Tony Evers, our governor, basically just came out today and issued an edict that would, for almost a month, suspend everybody except essential personnel to their homes. How is this something that the American people are so eager and willing to embrace?
Well, for one thing, they've scared everybody, or at least enough. They've scared enough of them. But what we're witnessing is the emasculation of the male population. The men don't stand up anymore. They don't voice their opinions the way they used to, and the communities are fractured. In other words, we're not as neighborly as we used to be. We're not cohesive down the block, knowing everybody down the block. You know, when I was a boy, it was not unusual if someone had visitors in the neighborhood to take the visitors around to the other homes and introduce, this is my sister, they're here in town, I just wanted you to meet them. That was a kind of neighborliness that we had. We don't have that anymore. We're on this sort of thing, That's our neighborhood now, is that little thing in the palm of our hand that every time it rings we go nuts. And so it's separated us. So we don't feel like we're part of the community. We feel alone.
What's interesting to me is that the federal government is dawdling a little bit because of the infighting, right? They can't agree on what the Democrats and the Republicans want to do. But the state governors seem to be, Republican and Democrat, absolutely united in enforcing these very draconian laws to keep people off the street. And as far as I know, and we know it's true, governors of states are still required to follow the Constitution.
And their own state.
And their own state constitutions.
That's right.
In Wisconsin, I can see no legal precedent that would allow Tony Evers to do what he's doing. Why is nobody challenging this?
Well, that's a good question in itself. It also demonstrates, though, the mental attitude of the Republican Party. The Republicans are not arguing over how much to spend. They're arguing over what it's going to be spent on. and they're talking trillions of dollars. You know what it's going to do to our economy? I mean, the inflation is going to be terrible. And so we have actually put something forward from the deep state, if you will, that's so bad, and they're not arguing over putting it forward. They're just arguing over, well, can we do it this way or that way or the other way? And in fact, the John Birch Society for years has done studies showing that under Republican administrations, we go further into socialism than under Democrat administrations. Why? Because there's no opposition from the Republican grassroots when the Republican leaders are doing it. And I think that Donald Trump has listened again to some bad advice and doing what he's doing because it's completely against his nature. And, we don't know really how this thing started. We don't really know. We do know that it came from China, and it was the delay of notifying the world that what was going on was their fault. But if they'd invaded the United States, the Chinese couldn't have done something worse to our country.
It is amazing, isn't it, that the reverberation of this is going to hit the highly sophisticated Western countries much harder than it hits China ultimately, and third world countries alongside of it. But you made an interesting point that I want to follow up on. That I think it's true. My argument has always been that Republicans and Democrats are doing the same thing. The Democrats are just doing it a little quicker.
Yes.
And I think that is perfectly on display in Washington. On one hand, you've got Donald Trump forcefully today rejecting the Democrats who are loading up their Senate bill with all sorts of pork, right? Mm-hmm. They want to bring back Obama phones. They want to do 10,000 things that have nothing to do with disease. So on the one hand, the Republicans look strong, right? Mitch McConnell gave a thundering speech against this. Trump said we're not going to have that. When in reality, what's happening is the Democrats, because they know the Republicans are going to move left on this, have decided to move extremely left, right? Asking for the moon, and they won't get the moon, but they'll get pretty close to it anyway. It's a win-win for the Democrats, it seems to be.
That's right. Every time they do this sort of thing, it's two steps that are proposed, and the Republicans say, no, this is conservative. We'll only go one step, But it's always to the left. It's not to the right. It's not getting rid of this draconian things. It's imposing them, or more taxes or whatever. Although they may take some taxes off here and some regulations there, but overall, it's a plus for the growth of government.
6 months from now, the virus is a memory. What does our republic look like, if you can even call it a republic? How much of what's being done over the next couple of months at the federal level will even be able to be pushed back against? Where do you think we're going to be when the virus recedes? What's our government going to look like?
Our government's going to have at least the precedent of doing this again. If it's going to roll back again in the fall, they will be imposing these things again, perhaps, unless there's something that they find that can cure it very quickly. There are some promising things like the anti-malaria vaccines, but we'll see. But nonetheless, it's not going to roll back all the way unless the American people wake up to the fact that, wait a minute, this is wrong, and they start to pressure their state representatives and their congressmen.
Yeah, the funny thing about this, Art, is that on one level you could say it's nice to see finally the states exercising control at the expense of the federal government. But why did it take something like this? Well, the states have been quiet. Things like Common Core, you and I have talked about that, right? Yep. States rolled over. I can think of a dozen other things. Sanctuary cities, right? Where they're still going on, right? The feds are doing nothing about that. And so follow up on this a little bit. Why did it take this for the states to actually get involved?
Well, it's because I think it goes back to a question you asked earlier, why isn't somebody standing up and suing and that sort of thing? On the federal level, people really do understand that there's unconstitutional things that they can't impose on the states, on the people, but the states can. They can get away with it, even though their constitution may say the same thing as the federal or even more strict relative to guarding freedom. But most people don't read their state constitution. There are not very many people that read the federal constitution, but even less read their state constitutions. And so one of the things that's going to help, the only thing that will really help, is that more people get organized, get involved in something with others to stop this, like the John Birch Society.
I think that's it. Civics is the answer. We're paying for ignorance in this country right now, historical and cultural ignorance. Art Thompson, CEO of the John Birch Society, thanks for joining us today.